Great to be in Vancouver, even with this kind of weather. It reminds me of home. It's pretty snowy where I'm from. So, before we do anything else, anyone have a cell phone here? Everybody has one. So there's the number, 509-203-4500. You can memorize it, write it down, just text 411. You'll get on our free email list. I'll send you some very worthwhile information. And I am going to do this lecture on a webinar. So if you text and get on our free list, I'll probably do a little more detail on the webinar than I have for the 20 minutes allotted here. I want you to know that I'm quite serious about making money for the subscribers. I don't like long lists. If you can't pick 6 stocks and make money, you don't know what you're doing, period. Then that's not me saying it. Someone much better than I am. His name is William O'Neill. He founded Investors Business Daily, and he beats the heck out of Warren Buffett, but he's too humble to say it, so I'll say it for him. So the number one company is on, we rate them 4.0 and higher as a buy. A 2 is a hold sell. So actually company number one made 39%, not 0, but I put 0 because we didn't have it as a buy. And the rest of those companies did as advertised. This is for 1 year. I expect the sector to do at least this well again this year. So if you average those 7 that are left, the average return was a 63% gain. These are big companies. These are companies that you can get all the information on. It's safe. I teach put big money in big companies, medium money in medium companies, and if you're going to speculate, which is most of what you find out here, that's fine. We like doing that. My top spec company, the best thing I've seen in 40 years in this business, my mastermind people got it at 25 cents. And it's already been almost up tenfold, and I think it's going tenfold again. So they'll make 100 times on their money, if I'm right. But that's where you bet a little to win a lot. That's what I teach. So there's that. Here's something that I dug out. I put this on many of my early writings on the internet. This comes from Robert Hemhill, who worked at the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta, Georgia. If all the bank loans were paid, no one would have a bank deposit. There would not be a dollar of coin or currency in circulation. This is a staggering thought. We are completely dependent upon the commercial banks. Someone has to borrow every dollar we have in circulation, cash or credit. If the banks were to create ample synthetic money, i.e. currency, we are prosperous. If not, we starve. We are absolutely without a permanent monetary system. When one gets a complete grasp of the picture, the tragic absurdity of our hopeless position is almost incredible. But there it is. It is one of the most important subjects intelligent persons can investigate and reflect upon. It is so important that our present civilization may collapse unless it becomes widely understood and the defects remedied very soon. For all those political types in the audience, please bear with me, and if you don't like what I'm saying on this slide, you can leave. That's how strong I feel about this. This is the power pyramid. This is how the system works, and this is the truth. The bottom of the pyramid is us. Just above us is government, who controls us. But who controls them? Well, what's the next tier up? Major conglomerates, major corporations. Who's above them? The banks. Who's above them? The commercial banks. Who's above that? The international banks. Who's above that? The banks that control the international banks. And who's above that? The Bankers Bank, the Bank of International Settlements. And who's above that? The all-seeing eye. That's who's above that. That's the way it works. So I don't believe there's a lot of difference between Party A, Party B, Party Red, Party Blue. Yeah, there's some, but it's mostly diversion from what really goes on in the way the world really works. And that's a good pictorial. It comes from Foster Gamble, who put together the movie Thrive, and that's his slide. He gave me permission to use it. So what if silver were treated like gold? Let's get into the heart of my lecture today. So let's just look briefly at just some of the subtleties that are surrounding the gold market that we all kind of take for granted, we don't really think about, but they are deeply implanted in our subconscious. Gold is the money of kings, silver is the money of gentlemen, barter is the money of peasants, but debt is the money of slaves. That comes from Norm Franz. I know Norm. I actually been on the stage with him in the past. I actually invited him to Silver Summit to speak as well. And that is something that I want to just key in on about the word money. Gold is money. Silver is money. And that's really the crux of this lecture. So we all hear about the gold standard. It's the gold standard. A lot of things are referred to as the gold standard. Our airline is the gold standard in airlines. Our automobile is the gold standard in automobiles. Our think tank is the gold standard of think tanks. It's referred to often, meaning it's the best of the best. Nothing is superior to the gold standard. That, again, is deeply implanted in our subconscious. Good as gold, story of grown-up parents, grown old, and it's just a book. I just wanted to use that reference to as good as gold. So if you've got something that's as good as gold, again, it's as good as it gets. Something that we deeply know, even though it's not in circulation, even though it's still embedded in our consciousness, that gold is as good as it gets. The golden rule, I think most of us know that. Another platform. I mean, if you do the golden rule, you really achieve the best. That's the best rule. It's the golden rule. And then, of course, all that glitters is gold. And this, I don't know if it's true or not, but I thought I'd throw it in the slide deck. The desire for gold is the most universal and deeply rooted commercial instinct of the human race. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. Gold is money. Everything else is credit. J.P. Morgan, no relation, please. 1912. All right, so that's gold. You know, the gold standard, as good as gold, as good as it gets, good, 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 good. Everything about it is a positive. Now let's look at the silver market. First of all, I digress for a moment. I know this is Canada. 40% of my business is Canadians. I love Canada. It's just that as a point on monetary history, we, the United States, was on a silver standard, not on a gold standard. A dollar is a weight. It's a weight. You could, if anyone knew what a dollar was, you could walk into the grocery store or the farmer's market, you could walk up with a sack of carrots and say, I'd like $1 worth. And that would be roughly 3/4 of a troy ounce. That's what it is. It's a weight. It's 371.25 grains of 999 fine silver. And that weight is what a dollar is. At law, still today. Silver certificate is a receipt for one of those units. That's what that is. It's not money. It's a receipt for money. You can see silver certificate. I won't belabor the point. I've done it in many of my interviews. So here we're talking about silver. Now, if silver were treated as good as gold, silver would be as good as gold, right? It'd be a gold standard. The silver standard would be equal to the gold standard, right? But is it? Here is a complete guide to U.S. junk silver coins. I don't know about you, but the word junk to me sort of means like it's not all that great, you know? I mean, I don't have a lot of junk. I have some, but it's not what I put in my living room. I keep my junk in the backyard, right? So there's junk silver, and then we scrap our silver. You know, there's silver scrap. You know, if you got silver and you don't want it anymore, you scrap it. I don't know about you, but as for me, scrap has a negative connotation as well. And then, of course, we have silver melt. That's those coins and necklaces and rings and all those things that you don't want anymore. You melt them down. And there are some positives. Born with a silver spoon in your mouth, that equates to someone born wealthy. And this one kind of has a mixed metaphor, really. Every cloud, which kind of is a negative or cloudy day, maybe not that sunny, not that bright, but it has a silver lining. That's a positive. And before we move on and talk about money, which is, again, the core of this lecture, is that labor. Adam Smith said labor is the first price, the original purchase, money that was paid for all things. It was not by gold or silver, but by labor. That all wealth of the world was originally purchased. Keep that in mind. All right. Banks dissing silver and favoring gold has a long history. And it's in this film. You can get it on the internet for free. It's called The Secret of Oz. It's done by Bill Still. Bill and I don't see eye to eye on the solution to the monetary issue, but he makes some very, very good points. So I suggest if you have the time some weekend where it's kind of rainy and cloudy, you might want to watch this documentary. It's not very long. It's very well done in my view. So the real meaning of The Wizard of Oz is all about the Eastern establishment, the banking elite. Remember that slide? Taking you on the yellow brick road, which is the gold-only standard, going to the Emerald City where they print green pieces of paper and maintain control. The silver slippers is what Dorothy had in the book. They weren't ruby. That was for TV only. And maybe just to make sure people didn't catch on, that's my guess. And she has a common person. She wasn't in the Emerald City. She came from Kansas, about as typical Midwestern, average American as you can get, wearing silver slippers. And the whole crux of the issue back then, the crime of 1873, was the bankers taking everyone off the silver standard and going to a gold-only standard. And I don't have time to go into it. I'm halfway on my time already. But there's some excellent work done by a deep thinker talking about the gold standard as one step to fiat. If you have only one standard to work with, it's a lot easier to control than if you have two or three. Really, at time immemorial, we're pretty much on a trimetallic standard, copper, silver, and gold. But of course, that doesn't exist anymore. And of course, copper is way too valuable and has been for years. And that's why the United States quit minting copper pennies and went to zinc. All right, here's the most powerful fact about the gold-silver ratio. I didn't expect you to read this chart. I'm just doing it to prove I'm not making this up. But if you go back to ancient Egypt, the gold-silver ratio is like 2.5 to 1. So it took 2.5 ounces to buy an ounce of gold. If you go through all of history, what you're going to find is that the ratio of gold to silver was 20 to 1 or less for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I said that 4 times to let you know that for 4,000 plus years, the ratio never went above 20 to 1, and most of the time was around 12 to 1 or less. So my point is that when silver and gold are treated equally, and they're both thought of as one thing and one thing only, and that one thing is money, that silver has the highest value. So when silver is money, it purchases more than if it's an industrial commodity used in your cell phone. And I don't know if the bankers had the insight into that in 1873 or not. I do know it took place. I do know that Mr. Baum was wise enough to write The Wizard of Oz and tell us all about it. But silver-gold ratio tells us one thing. When silver's money, it's much, much, much more valuable. And when it's not, from 1873 on, you get these distortions. This is a slide of an inflation-adjusted silver price as of the early 2000s. I think 2003, the idea is correct. You probably can't see it from the back, but at the peak, silver was worth, inflation-adjusted, today's dollars, really 2003 dollars, of 1,400 plus an ounce, 1,400 an ounce. So if I tell you that silver can make it to 140, what I'm really saying is that silver can make it to 1/10 of the all-time inflation-adjusted price. That's what I'm saying. So if you look at that chart and you see the bottom right, you see on an inflation-adjusted basis, and I was screaming this at lectures like this in the early 2000s, and I didn't have this kind of an audience, believe me. I'm saying silver is the cheapest commodity on an inflation-adjusted basis it's ever been in all of recorded history. It was cheaper at $4 an ounce in 2000 than it was at 22 cents an ounce in the Great Depression, inflation adjusted. And guess what? Millionaires were not buying silver. It was the billionaires. Warren Buffett bought at that low. He's a value investor. George Soros, not fond of him, but he was in the silver market. Who else? Bill Gates in the silver market. So, silver's power is what it is, money. Central banks and gold. Well, last year, the central banks bought 224 tons of gold in the second quarter. So if silver is treated like gold, the central banks would have bought, what, 224 tons of silver. This is the gold reserves by country. I think this is inaccurate. I know the gentleman that made this chart. He is totally accurate in available data, so I'm not going to argue with him. I think China has much more gold than is stated there, but from this chart you can see that U.S. purportedly still has the most gold at over 8,000 tons. This is interesting. This is from Nick Beresheff. What this shows is as we went into the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, the bank's gold holdings went down, 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 down. Once that crisis happened, they keep going up, 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 up. That might tell you something. And by the way, if silver was treated the same as gold, the banks would be buying more and more and more silver. So here we have the crux of the whole argument if silver were treated like gold. Central banks' gold holdings is $1.6 trillion. And central banks' silver holdings are $1.6 billion. For those of you that are math majors out there, we know that 1,000 is a million, 1,000 million is a billion, which means 1,000 billion is a trillion. So we've got gold at 1.6 trillion and silver at 1.6 billion, which means that silver would have to increase in value 1,000 times to be treated like gold. I'm not saying it's going up 1,000 times. I'm making a lecture here. I'm trying to instill something about the silver market that most people don't understand. The word silver and the word money is synonymous in all the Romance languages. There's a gentleman who's no longer in the speaking circuit who used to talk about silver is not money. I said, that's ridiculous. If you go to Mexico and you say money isn't money, they don't know what the hell you're talking about. So in my view, silver's still got a long ways to go. I think that it is going to narrow the ratio from the 86 to 1 it is today as I speak to probably down to 16 to 1, maybe even 10 to 1. That's what I believe, but just because I believe doesn't make it true. But it's much more affordable. And there's a problem. The industrial use of silver keeps going up. Palladium, from a classic economic Austrian perspective, is money. But it isn't treated that way anywhere. And palladium has been on a tear only because of industrial use. Silver could be in that position. If any nation state, such as Mexico or Peru, decided to keep their 100 million ounces as a strategic reserve for solar, not even as money, just to have solar available to their population, it could definitely distort the market from where it is now. So back to me, text that number.